Now we go to Carol Nader.
Hi, Carol Nader from The
Carol.
Age. How can the Greens claim to be any different to the major political parties when you're accepting donations of $300,000 from one of the unions? And how is that going to influence your policies on industrial relations?
Yeah, thank you. The policies on industrial relations are as we have advocated them. I talked about the dividend that Rachel Seward got for flexible work hours. I talked about the abolition of the ABCC, which runs counter to international laws on legal rights for workers. And it is our intention to continue. I had a gentleman yesterday in Strathpine come up to me to tell me he's on he's a casual worker. He's just been docked $40 a week. The difference for him is he's going to have to move from his rental accommodation. He's going to have to go down on rental accommodation because he can't make ends meet. Now, why should, and this is a guy who has got no guaranteed holidays. He's got none of the things we Australians take for granted in a stable job, and certainly us politicians. But he was just saying how hard it is for him in his workplace. Now, we value people getting stronger representation, and that means union representation, and a very much stronger care for those workers at the bottom of the list in this country. I've talked about a minor tax increase on people at the top, but I talked to this gentleman about the bank executive who took $9 million home last year and is headed for $13 million this year. Now, governments will do nothing about that. Although we Greens would make it more reasonable, the take-home pay of CEOs. I'm embarrassed to say that we'd put a cap at $5 million, and I don't think anybody works hard enough to warrant $5 million a year, but there it is. But looking after people at the bottom end of the working income and rights list is something we're committed to. What was your other question, Carol?
The union donation.
Oh, the union donation.
How can you claim to be different from the major parties when you're accepting $300,000?
Well, we Greens have advocated the Canadian system of getting rid of all donations to political parties, which came out of a great corruption scandal in Canada in the 90s, and they limited it to $1,000 per individual, but corporations, unions and so on can't donate, and you have public funding. That's our party position, that's our policy position. But we're in the real world where the big parties have voted that down time and again. And so, yes, we do accept donations from individuals, from small businesses, from the union sector, and I must say that commensurate with our rise in the polls, our donation base has been increasing, and I'm very happy that that's because we will be in the race to the finishing post. But we won't have anything like the spending power of Labor and the coalition. Nevertheless, we will go to the finishing post better than we have been able to before, because individuals believe, and unions and some small businesses have donated to us in a way they've never done before. Why shouldn't the renewable energy industry want to support the Greens when their industry depends on us?
Speaking of the finishing post, we've got to wrap it up soon, but we've got time for one more question from Marcus Mannheim.
Marcus Mannheim at the Canberra Times. This is a question about you holding the balance of power, which looks likely after the election, and also your earlier comments about the urgent need to address climate change. Now, both the main parties at the moment are offering mostly grants and subsidies as means to address climate change in the next government. You didn't support the emissions trading system because you didn't believe it was the best way to address climate change. I'm assuming you don't support these measures. Will you block them when they reach the Senate? And also, are there any areas of policy failure, any circumstances of policy failure that could possibly lead to you blocking supply?
Well, on the second question, no, we will not block supply. That's been the way all the way down the line, and that is the Senate is a very powerful House, and we're very aware of the powers of the Senate, and we have shown we will use them responsibly to give accountability on government to the people of Australia. On the other matter, the balance of power, we'll negotiate on all issues that come along. But we didn't just say no to the CPRS. We were not going to support a system which wouldn't reduce greenhouse gas emissions in this country, but which transferred $20 billion over the next 10 years off taxpayers and put it into the pockets of the polluters. Our proposal for a carbon tax does the reverse. It takes the money off the polluters and puts it into householders, small business and the renewable energy industry. Now, that said, we'll look at the proposals for taking money off taxpayers, as Tony Abbott wants to do, but not the polluters, and fix up climate change. It won't, it'll fail. Ross Garnaut again said that this week. If you don't have a carbon price, you won't succeed. The Greens have a carbon price, the other parties don't, and they won't succeed. And we see, I'm surprised that Julia Gillard hasn't rolled out proposals for baseload power, for an energy grid beyond her $1 billion that links up our geothermal resources and our wind power resources. And, for example, the fantastic wind potential of the Eyre Peninsula. But they're going nowhere. That's a big burden on us. But we're used to this. End the destruction of forests in Australia and you reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 20%, forests and woodlands, and they won't look at it. That's the biggest carbon banks on terrestrial Australia. Get a decent energy efficiency program in and you reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 50 to 20%. We've got the inventory, but the governments won't act on it. We are the action party on climate change, but we've got our feet on the ground. We're not going to block measures which are really going to improve the prospects of reducing greenhouse gas emissions in this country in a reasonable way, considering it's taxpayers' money. But we will be strongly advocating, and I believe we will get a carbon tax in the next triennium, and I'll tell you why. Because I think business wants it. It's not just the Greens here, it's business wants it. The great majority of Australians want it, and the Greens will be the vehicle for bringing forward the day when we get real climate change action in this great nation of ours.
Thank you, Senator Brown. We'll have to finish there. Thank you for joining us today. Please accept this small